Welcome to That's Inclusive, where we talk about disability and what it means to live a full life engaging in our communities. What does that look like, and how can we work together to make our world a more inclusive place?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to That's Inclusive, a podcast by the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm Isadora Rodriguez Legendre. I'm the executive director at the DD Council, and I'm here today with Sarah Tollefsen from Able, New Hampshire. And we're going to learn more about Able, New Hampshire and what they do. But first, let's have Sarah introduce herself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. So my name is Sarah Tollefsen, and I'm the executive director at Able New Hampshire. And Able stands for Advocates Building Lasting Equality, and our mission is to advocate for the civil and human rights of children and adults with disabilities. We promote full participation by improving systems, connecting families, inspiring communities, and influencing public policy. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's great. That's a lot.
Yep.
That's definitely a lot. And one of the reasons that we love Able New Hampshire is because your mission and our visions align so well in that, we really promote inclusion and community participation and really kind of take an action-oriented approach. And for us, advocacy is really important. Can you tell us a little bit about how Able advocates for people with disabilities?
Definitely. So Able, to go back a little bit, Able historically was really started by a group of parents who wanted to advocate for their children and adult children who were receiving services like through the DD services that we have in New Hampshire. And so that's been going on since its inception in the 90s. And as time has gone on, we've evolved a bit into still doing that, but also starting to acknowledge that we really also want to create opportunities for people with disabilities themselves to know how to and be in the right places to advocate for themselves. So I'm still doing that in regards to services. We also do a lot of advocating at the State House through legislation, and we're very busy with that right now. But kind of those are the two avenues. And then I would say also we do a little bit of like community advocating too, where we're kind of trying to reach out to just the general New Hampshire community and make sure that that people with disabilities are not an afterthought, are a consideration in businesses and recreation and things like that.
Yeah, that's great. It's very similar to what we do. And we love that you all kind of give space to people with disabilities to be that voice, to be those leaders in the community, really around topics that are important to them, right?
Yes.
And there's no shortage of those in New Hampshire, in a place where, we have our minimum wage is the federal minimum wage, so people don't earn enough. There's a housing shortage. There's a workforce crisis to be able to support people with disabilities, and really employment is also a big topic area, I know, for our members who have disabilities and want to work and are having trouble kind of finding meaningful, competitive, integrated employment in New Hampshire that support them and the ways that they need. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became the executive director and what kind of interested you in this field?
Yes. So when I was in college, I went to St. Anselm College, and my mom was She was one of the vice presidents at the Moore Center, which is one of the area agencies in New Hampshire. And I needed a second job, I think, to pay for a car or shopping or something like that. So my mom was like, well, we're looking for people to work at this group home. And the group home had 8 people living in it, and they all had intellectual or developmental disabilities and also physical disabilities. So they all required a really significant amount of personal care services.
Okay.
So I got a job there, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced before. Stepping in there was just like stepping into a whole new world. And I worked there. I worked at the Moore Center for 13 years. I worked at that group home for several years. And it really just became a part of who I was, because I was still kind of growing into a person while I was working there. And I would say like the biggest things that kind of became a part of me were seeing other people, not for what they look like or their level of intelligence or their ability to run a race or play a board game, but really truly like who they were as people and how they treated other people and how they reflected on the world and were able to give and receive. And what I came to realize was that I was surrounded by people who I could admire and have beautiful relationships with, and also deserved the same things that anybody else deserved, and weren't getting those same opportunities. So after I did that, I worked in various ways in the Moore Center. I did do employment for a while, since you brought up employment. And at the time when I started there was still piecework and
sheltered workshops.
Yes. And I was like, I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And so I just was like, this is outrageous that people are paid less than minimum wage. I don't even understand. So we actually, in our employment program, which was robust, we did away with it. Every contract that we had where people were getting paid minimum wages, we either asked them to pay minimum wages or we didn't work with them anymore. And so that was gone very soon after I started in that. And then I did, I brought Project Search to Manchester, which I don't think is there anymore, but at the time I just had so much respect for that program because it really aligned with the way that I saw the world and people with disabilities, which was that everybody, regardless of disability or non-disability, has skills and value that they can add to any business. And it's just a matter of finding what those things are and then kind of making efficiencies for each person at an organization to be able to give their skills to the organization. So I loved that about that program. And then, so I worked at the Moore Center for 13 years, and then I had some children. So I also owned a yoga studio. I quit the Moore Center, yoga studio. And then I started selling real estate, and I did that for a while. But in regards to what brought me specifically to ABLE, I would say I have always been really passionate about the rights of people with disabilities, human rights in general, the rights of children, women. And so the mission of ABLE really spoke to me and felt like it was the right fit for what I would like to contribute into the world.
That's awesome. It's really great. I feel like a sense of identification because it's really great when you find a job that really aligns with your passion for both kind of leaving the world in better condition than you found it, and also helping to educate and inform people about the value that every human being brings to the table, no matter what they're going through or what their situation is. Like, we have to as human beings, realize that we all bring important things into every situation, and that it's that variety of perspective and that kind of lived experience of differences that help us really, I guess, find meaningful ways to connect everyone, right?
Yes.
In a similar way. So when we talk about our disability work, we say that improving communities and building the capacity for New Hampshire neighborhoods to support people with disabilities helps improve the community and the neighborhood for everybody who lives there,
Yes.
right? And it's really not an us and them type of scenario. It's we're all in this together. So we better make sure that it's the best boat, right? We're all in the same boat. We better make sure it's the best boat that we can get to where we can weather any storm and it can carry us wherever we need to go. So that's fantastic. I love that. Tell me a little bit more about kind of the priorities that ABLE has currently.
Yeah. So every year at our annual meeting, we're a membership organization. People can be a member, and being a member means that you have like access to some of the trainings that we're offering. And I would say probably like most important from my perspective is you have a voice when ABLE is making decisions about the stands that we are taking on any particular issue that that impacts people with disabilities. That to me seems like one of the big reasons to become a member as an individual. So we poll our membership at our annual meeting and say, what are some of the areas that you'd like to work on this year? And the membership decides, and then we set up task forces to come together. Anyone who has an interest in working on that particular issue, and that could be members, other community stakeholders, service providers, individuals with disabilities, family members of people with disabilities, anybody. And they will come together and kind of find one particular task that is actionable that they can work on throughout the next 6 months or a year, however long it takes them to accomplish it. So this year, the things that we're working on are our two new ones are transportation, which is such a wide. Did you go to the transportation meeting?
I was not able to attend the transportation meeting, but let me tell you that that is a nut that we've been trying to crack for a while. The transportation in New Hampshire is so like community specific.
Yes.
And the funding for it is so community specific that it's really hard to kind of make an impact where someone who lives in Nashua wants to come to Concord, and like, how do you make that happen? It's kind of been impossible to address that.
Yeah, we're such a unique area. Like New Hampshire, all things considered, is also just really rural. So it's hard to get places, period. And one of the things that, I think the group might be interested in working on is kind of, there's a lot of topics that affect many people in New Hampshire, not just people with disabilities. And so there are already other organizations who are working on particular issues. And ABLE wants to also make sure that people with disabilities have a voice at those tables. So when there's other groups of people who are working on transportation and trying to crack the nut, they're not overlooking the particular needs that people with disabilities also have as it relates to transportation.
Right.
So part of like for that one, their work might be to kind of figure out who those groups are that are trying to work on it in general for the general community, and then come to them and say, let us be a part of your conversation so that you're including people with disabilities. when you're coming up with solutions. So that's transportation.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And that's like kind of a true grassroots community organizing approach, right?
Yes.
Is that you're not going to reinvent the wheel, you're going to infiltrate, for lack
Yes.
of a better word, infiltrate spaces where there is all of this important work already happening, get to know the players, get to know how the process works so that then you can be a contributor and a collaborator within that process. I mean,
Yes.
we run into that all the time, that sometimes there are groups or individuals that want to kind of create something new and something that is important because it's an area that has been identified as an area of need, especially for people with disabilities. But you're swimming against the current if you are not working with the groups and with the organizations that have the manpower, have the funding, have the resources, have all of the foundational work laid. Because again, transportation is an area just like housing, where there's been a lot of work in the state happening for many, many years, and a lot of different players are contributing valuable time, energy, resources, and funding to helping address these issues. So you don't want to create something kind of off to the side that's just specific to people with disabilities. No. You want to go into those spaces and say, okay, here we are. Don't forget about us. And here's how you support our needs within your existing plan, right? And like that for me, I think has a greater impact than people realize.
100%. And that is, you could not have said it better, that is what, as an organization, the approach that we want to take when it comes to big issues like that. And we're not a service organization. Right. We're not equipped to make up new plans and deliver them, or to tell other people, hey, we have this great idea, can put it together and get the funding. So that's really our place, is to go to those places and say, we're here. People with disabilities are 1 in 4 people in the United States. Disability is a natural occurrence in human life. And we need to make sure that you're thinking of us when you're making your own plans. So
that's great. So what are some of the other kind of focus areas that you all have been working on?
Okay, so there's a new mental health equity task force, which has only met once. And all of our, if anybody wants to check out any of the task forces, we have a community calendar on our website, and they're all listed there.
Nice.
And then we have a housing one. Housing is a really big issue right now for people with disabilities in New Hampshire. Everybody knows, I think, that this is just kind of looming over our heads, that there could be a housing crisis soon for people with disabilities. And that,
I mean, I think that it's already here, right? There's a housing crisis for everyone.
everybody.
The rents are so high and the vacancy rate is so low, and really the cost of living and the is way more than folks earn at a typical job, right? And so it creates this issue, and now you have competition for scarce resources, right? And so people with disabilities sometimes that have different types of income or depend on housing vouchers kind of fall to the bottom of the list when you're a landlord who has the ability in New Hampshire. That's something we're working on advocating against, is that they can kind of discriminate on the type of income and the type of voucher that somebody holds as a renter. They can choose to, take whoever they think is the most, the candidate with the most income, let's say, versus someone who might need some supports and services, which is discriminatory and it should not be allowed. But it is in New Hampshire, so we're working on
Yeah,
that.
that's such a big issue. Really, because I work in real estate, I do work with landlords, and
Mhm.
um I will say that I have a small handful of landlords that I work with who like altruistically
Mhm.
rent their spaces and are like, I need
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm being equitable in
Mhm.
the big picture, and keep their rents lower.
Right.
They'll say, how much is this worth? And I'll say, I think that you could charge this much. And I have people who will say, I'm not going to charge that much. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem right. And those are my favorite people.
Yeah.
I love them. There should be more.
That's Yeah, there should be more. And there should be more landlords really willing to make reasonable accommodations for anyone. Whether they're already a tenant or whether they're renting a vacant space, it's really about considering what the individual's needs are, because they're going to be a good tenant if you
Definitely.
are supporting whatever their needs are, right? And so yeah, that's another tough nut.
We're getting all the big issues. So then we also have a civic engagement task force, which that one's been going for a while. And Kristen, our policy director, she runs that one. And like last month, she ran a training there on how to tell your story for
Nice.
testimony. Yeah. And it ended up that like a week later, she was at a hearing and three people who were in her training testified.
How
That
cool.
was really, yeah, it was nice to just see how that came
Mhm.
full circle, and the whole process from start to finish worked out, that people took her training and then used it just in the coming week.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah. And then we have the oral healthcare task force. We do a lot of
Mhm.
oral healthcare work at Able. That's definitely one of our big priorities.
Yeah.
And then we have the last two kind of task forces are, you're very familiar with one of them because you go to it, Advocate New
Mhm.
Hampshire, which I'm
Yes.
really excited about this year. So Advocate New Hampshire, and you fill me, please jump in if
Yeah.
I miss anything. But Advocate New Hampshire was a self-advocacy conference that was being put on annually with, I think,
Mhm.
some really great success from what it sounds like,
Yes.
until COVID. And
Yes.
then it couldn't happen, obviously, in 2020.
Yeah.
And then just kind of hasn't been resurrected since then. So we were approached by, well, we went to a meeting actually. I
Mhm.
You were there, I think, right? At that
I
first.
think either me or some folks from my
Vanessa
team
was
were there.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, it was a meeting to like talk about possibly getting it back going.
Mhm.
And then after the meeting, we talked with the Institute on Disability, and they were like, "Would you like to work with us on putting this back on?
Mhm.
Because you have the infrastructure for self advocates."
Right.
And we were so excited and thrilled to be able to do that. And we have just like an awesome group of people who are working to put that on.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have anything to add about it?
Yeah, no, I am super excited about this task force also. I think Advocate New Hampshire as a group that was putting on that annual conference really was supported by the Institute on Disability. There was someone there who used to help convene the meetings and help with the planning. And so it kind of makes sense that there be kind of a group that helps organize and coordinate the self advocates that are providing input. So it was always talked about as a conference by self advocates for self advocates. So the people with disabilities, and I go to the task force meeting, so I know it's the people with disabilities kind of leading the work and getting things done and calling the hotels and thinking about what are the topic areas that we want to present on. So it's really incredible. And it's also been helpful to kind of what I see is a connection developed, having developed with People First of New Hampshire and SALT, and being able to kind of collaborate with other self-advocacy groups in the state to really have this amazing opportunity for people who are interested in either learning about advocacy or going to a conference where the leaders are presenting are people with disabilities, and kind of being that power of example of like all the things you can accomplish and all the things that are important when you want to tell your story, when you want to advocate for better communities and more inclusive communities for people with disabilities. So I always say that like we're stronger together. So something like this, again, it's very exciting because there are so many groups and individuals kind of really wanting this to be successful. So the conference is scheduled for October 4th in Concord. So,
Oh, wrong.
we were both wrong. So, but yeah, we're excited. So far, it looks like it's going to be at the Holiday Inn in Concord on October 4th. You have some exciting topics that people with disabilities are excited about presenting. I think the theme is going to be the art of advocacy, and I know that there's like an art project being planned by People First of New Hampshire. They were talking about it at their last meeting. So that is super exciting. I can't wait.
I do. I just want to echo that. Like, I love the partnerships that are being made. And then if I can puff my chest for a second, I will say that the thing that I am most proud about Able is that we are not just talking the talk, we are walking the walk. And everything that we do is done by, for, and with people with disabilities. We're not, we know the value of our members and what they have to give. And they run with it. And just like as an example, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, like Alex, who is facilitating the Advocate New Hampshire task force, he and I was trained to facilitate groups. Like that was my last job at the Morris Center, was I was a facilitator. And it takes like real skill to be able to do that I had to learn. I didn't just know it.
Right.
And that guy is so skilled at facilitating group. And so like, no one's going to stand in his way to be able to do that. He is truly doing like a phenomenal job doing that. And it goes back to like, you have to, for anyone, any human, you have to just find what it is that their gifts are, and then provide the opportunity for them to be able to give it. And that's how we all commune, I think, in the big picture.
Yeah, that's great. I so appreciate that sentiment, and I definitely want to piggyback on that and say that part of what we appreciate about Able New Hampshire, the DD Council, is your willingness to partner, is that understanding that we all bring something and we need to support people to really develop their leadership skills, to really build their confidence, build their skills, and support them in whatever way they need. We have for a long time appreciated that Able is an ally and definitely aligned with our work. And a lot of times, because we're a federally funded state agency, we have limitations that you all don't. And so we appreciate that you all are there and you have our backs and you're able to say the things that we want to say. But because of our funding, we can't, for example, lobby or tell people how to vote on something. But we can certainly set up the stories. We have plenty of families and individuals who are either members or are allies of our organization who can very clearly say what the impact is going to be of some, policy or law. And then we kind of, I feel like we tee it up, and then you guys swing it out of the park by saying, yeah, so you can't vote for this. Right.
Yeah, we do. That's like a great description of how we all partner with one another and can kind of Abel's place in those relationships, those organizational relationships. And right now, the staff that we have such an awesome group of people that are working at Able. And we spend a lot of time talking about how we can advocate for the difficult issues while still remaining respectful and in partnership, even with people and organizations that we don't have the same views with. And everyone at our organization right now is just really skilled at doing that. We're really a group of very thoughtful and kind people who are also delivering difficult messages sometimes, I think, when it comes to advocating.
Yeah. And it makes it that much more easily heard, I think, when the messenger is someone who kind of understands how, human relationships work and how people are wired to align or not align with certain viewpoints, like really being able to have the approach, the very person-centered approach, I want to say, to advocacy, and finding that thing that someone who maybe doesn't align with all of the priorities that Able has, but finding that thing that you can connect on as common ground and really developing that relationship to be able to work together no matter what. We have a common goal, right?
We do. Yeah. So many of the organizations that we work with, I was actually thinking about this when you first started talking about how our missions are aligned. When I first started, I looked at the missions of our 3 advisor organizations. So you, the Institute on Disability, and the Disability Rights Center. And I was really surprised and delighted to see that there was common threads throughout all of them. Yeah. Even though we're all doing kind of a little bit different work, we are all working towards the same goals.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time today to talk to us on our podcast. We're really
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
And we look forward to working with you on many, many of the areas of need that New Hampshire has, and really building our advocacy networks and building the leadership of people with disabilities to really say what they want and be that voice of change in New Hampshire.
We have a lot of work to do, but we're looking forward to doing it. And we are very, very thankful for our partnership with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vanessa Blaze, and this was a production of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, produced by Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre and Vanessa Blaze, with many thanks to Josh Hardy and the rest of the crew here at Concord TV. We love to have guests with differing perspectives. These views are personal and do not necessarily represent those of the DD Council.